So we thought it'd be really useful to give a contractor's perspective on working in the DFG sector rather than just, I suppose, being inside looking out. We've got somebody slightly on the outside looking in, and as was one of the finalists in the Healthy Housing Awards last year. So in conversation with our own Francis Phillipa, I will hand over to Francis to introduce Andrew from UPS Building.
Oh, I'm really pleased. Thank you, Paul. Really pleased that, as Paul says, too often the management of contractors is ad hoc and is a sort of afterthought. But actually, if you think about it, this is what the customer feels. This is what they get to see. This is what they get to control or not control. It's a really important stakeholder in the whole thing. And even at Foundations, we never hold contractors' afternoons. So I'm really pleased that Andrew's agreed to join us to give his perspective on how it feels and how you can manage some of the risks. Good afternoon, Andrew. Welcome to the Foundations webinar. Maybe it's best if you just introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Andrew Wood. I'm the CEO of UPS Building and Maintenance. We are 13 years old and we've been specialising in adaptations for probably the last 7 years now. We work all over the Northwest for private landlords, for housing associations, to councils, you name it. Pretty much, we do it, ranging from Riverside, Housing Association, Chorley Council, Bolton, Wigan, Rochdale, to name but a few. Plenty in Manchester. We probably on average install between 3 and 5 wet rooms a day consistently throughout the year.
Cool. Brilliant. So we just heard that the bureaucracy in managing contractors, the sort of delays that impinges, really slows the process and is more likely to lead to complaint. You must have experienced some of that. What, on the whole, works best for you? What works for you? Where I don't name names, but what works best in terms of contractor management for you? Where do you get the best results for both yourself and the customer?
Personally, for us and in my experience, frameworks. And for me, the longer the framework, the better. This allows us to invest in our team. It allows us to invest in apprenticeships. It allows us to invest fully, engage with that client and the customers, and give it the service that it delivers rather than ad hoc, you're all over. That just gives us real stability over a period of time that we know that, you know, and it doesn't always happen, but generally that you've got X amount of work to do over an X period amount of time and you can plan correctly for it. And it's a massive benefit, I think, than doing something that is ad hoc, that you may just go out and price, may win, may not win. And I just think it gives everyone, or certainly the customer, a much better experience, in my opinion.
How would a local authority manage that, though, Andrew? Would that not mean you end up resting on your laurels in, say, year 3, and actually you'll need to invest in best quality service because frameworks by definition reduce competition and therefore might actually reduce also the quality of the work? Or do you have ways of managing that?
I mean, I suppose that might vary from contractor to contract, Francis, but for me, actually coming towards the end of a framework is actually when you've got your team at the best it can possibly be, because, you know, you've gone through those years of training and improving and processes and getting everything perfect, and then it's just about to go. And that's what, you know, one of my bugbears a little bit. I wish they could be longer, because all that time and investment and money that you spend on that team and your family can just go at a flick of a button if you're not the cheapest. Or,
and that's, yeah, and I suppose that is the big risk in framework procurement, of course, to the contractors. So when there is no framework and jobs are procured singly or by individual tender, how do you manage the paperwork and the process? What actually happens practically for contractors?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to a framework, but you have to do a lot more work at the front end. So, you know, you're instead of having to receive a job with the plans, with the schedule already priced, you know where you are, you're effectively doing that front end. So you're receiving the job, you're having to find time to go out and price it, potentially design it as well. You know, which adds, you know, in my opinion, it roughly adds around 6 weeks onto the process. And also, I think it gives the customer a little bit of annoyance. You know, if that's getting sent out to 4 contractors that are then knocking on the door to come and look at a job, to do a drawing, to price it up, they ask you questions, you've not got the answers for that question because you don't know if you're going to win it or not. I just think it creates a whole communication mismatch, in my opinion. It's, you know, we manage it as best we possibly can in regards to ensuring that we get our quotes back in a timely manner, that we put it into our management system. We give ourselves a set amount of time, and our management system is sort of giving us an alert if we've got over that time to get that quote back to our client.
So just tell me a bit about the practicalities. Where you are asked to design and build,
Yes.
are there ways for you to offset the design costs into the ultimate quote, or is that just lost money?
Yeah, generally it's lost money. You know, we would probably lean on one of our providers like an AKW or a Procare or someone like that to come and do the design with us on the basis that we purchase the materials through them. Again, this can lead to sometimes having to have 2 appointments to a tenant's property, once from our site management team and one from the design team. So again, it's making another appointment. So yeah, I mean, it's feasible, but there is a lot more steps in that process to get that quote and that design together to send back to the client. And if I'm really honest, if you're a busy contractor at that time and you get one of these jobs come through and you're busy, you tend to go, oh, I'll just leave that to that side, or it can happen. It's the problem sometimes with that, you know, and it also, I think the gentleman mentioned it before, that you also get to know the other people that are pricing it as well, and it becomes unfair quite quickly.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? There is no straightforward answer to it. I think there's good and bad in both systems. I do know one thing, that the calling off individual jobs for each job is really time intensive and does wind everybody up. And actually, if, as increasingly is the case, we try to address the capacity issue in the contractors market. In other words, there's not enough contractors around to ramp up the scale that the program is now demanding, then we're going to have to find new ways of, or new relationships in which we engage with contractors. Now, Roy was just talking about how the complaints flush out the fact that poor monitoring of work on site is a frequent cause for complaint. Is there a role in the contractor around monitoring? How do you, as a contractor, cover the risk of poor monitoring? Because some local authorities must be good at it. Some of them will leave you alone to do the job, and you won't see a hide or hair of them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with it. In most of the authorities we work for, we do get left alone, but we get left alone, I believe, because we do the job and we do the job right. And communication is the key in that. Roy mentioned it before. It is all about communication. I mean, not only that, we have an extra process within our business that our site manager is the person that goes around and does the pre-start with the customer, builds that relationship with the customer, works out what those customers' needs are on day one. You know, they might have a carer that comes in at such and such a time. Information that you tend not to get from the council that you're working for. I don't know why, but I think it's something to do with GP, the rules about it. But just sometimes the intricate information that you don't get, we try and find out, and that's recorded on our management system.
Yeah, it's such a good point, Andrew. I noticed it in the chat that one of the technical officers put in there saying, can you cover some of those risks off by a pre-start meeting? And what he means is get the contractor and the client together and have that conversation, because absolutely right, you need that nitty-gritty in order to actually prepare yourself for the job, both in terms of the contract but also in terms of the customer.
Yeah, I believe it's vital, and then from going on from that, our management system helps with it prompts our operatives every day before they start work to do a risk assessment, to ask COVID questions. All the things that should happen, our app enforces it to happen. So it gives us that compliance and that.
So is that on their phones, or is that
through an app? Yeah. We use a management system called SimPro. That gives an app to every operative, and that's how we manage their diaries. And not only that, in regards to communication, one thing that is really important, again, with that site manager, is from that pre-start, he is that point of contact throughout that work. It's not like a TLO or someone that would only ever see that person on pre-start. It's the same person unless he's on holiday. So the customer gets a point of contact. And also one thing that we do is we give the customer a little pack. So they have contact details on, little fridge magnets, so they can put it on the fridge, so they know a mobile number for that site manager, rather than just a generic number, a call out number if they have anything out of hours that goes wrong, which is very rare, but it's there for them. But the biggest one, still communication, is we call that customer every single morning to let them know who's coming, good or bad news. And I'll put that openly. Nothing ever goes perfect. You know, we might have someone off, an operative that's sick, or the floor layer can't make it, or the materials didn't deliver. But as long as we phone them, we find that keeps the complaints.
I certainly recognise that, and that's just from building work in my own house. Our reports, Roy's report suggests that local authorities should engage with contractors a little bit more positive, rather than have an inspection regime, is offer them some skills development opportunities. Would you have welcomed that as you were growing your business? And what should it have been on? What should it have been about? Because I have no idea what shape that would take. I got your point about the framework giving you time to invest in your workforce, and therefore also giving you opportunities to develop the skills of your operatives.
Yeah.
Is there a role of local authorities in that?
I think so. I think frameworks that work best are a partnership, and I generally believe that. Even if you go back to that communication, what I said before, if being the contractor is sometimes difficult because you're in the middle of what the client's expecting and what the customer's expecting, and you're stuck somewhere in the middle trying to please both. And I think having some workshops, apprentice support, dementia awareness training workshops, all things that are specific to this specialist work that we do, and it is specialist work, it's not like fitting a bathroom. No. I think would be all helpful. We do them internally. Would it be nice to have had some support from our local councils to do it? Yes, it would. Instead of, and just being open and honest, instead of just having a monthly meeting discussing your KPIs, what you've done bad, what you've done good, it would be nice to be engaged more and have a wider support on that. For me, it's a partnership, not just a here you are, here's X, go and get them done.
Mate, you just reminded me that there might be a role for Foundations in this. I think we should start considering drawing up courses for contractors as well as practitioners in the sector. There's one to note, Paul. And this is my last question. If there was one thing you'd like to see that would improve the experience for contractors and customers alike, what would that be?
I've probably got a long list, but I think for me, being a contractor that is very sure on what our why is, which is changing lives for the betters, and we love doing the work that we do, for us it would be to have longer frameworks that we could, you know, forget 2 years, 4 years, have opportunities to extend for longer than that if we're doing a good job and providing a quality service, because that's our family that we've spent time and effort training, that can go at a click of the fingers if someone comes in a lot cheaper than us or whatever, you know, whatever. I know there has to, and there's probably rules around tendering that stops that happening.
So the comments on the chat are exactly that, which is there are rules that stop us doing that. Those rules are exaggerated, actually. You can, a 7-year framework is not out of the way, and certainly public service contracting is increasingly looking at the longer term.
I would look, oh, sorry.
Sorry, you just said something interesting, which is that price is a really important issue here. But actually, the complaints are never about the price, are they? They're always about the quality. So, would those frameworks be priced evaluated evenly, or price and quality? What would you like to see?
I would love to see that as well. I mean, again, as I mentioned before, adaptations are a specialist field, and not only that, the customers that we're dealing with are special. They require extra care and attention, and I believe quality should be well more weighted than price in the frameworks that are available. And I am starting to see a bit of trend in that changing over the years, but I would like to see it even more than what it is.
All right, so I'm Santa Claus here, and I'll give you everything you've just asked for. Yeah, year 7, you've built up a business.
Yeah.
And Greater Manchester Council has done a procurement exercise around its 10 core local authorities, and you lose your stake. Are you still a fan of frameworks?
Yes, because I know that to deliver the service that the customer requires in an adaptation, it's the only way to do it.
Okay, so my last question, and I promise this last one, and it's a problem I have with frameworks, is how do you allow new entrants in it? Because they're effectively, you create closed shops, don't you? For that period between tenders, nobody else can get in. How do you make sure that actually you don't just retain quality, but you also encourage new entries?
Is that not the point though of a framework, to allow a contractor to be able to get some stability with recruitment and training and apprenticeships and be able to deliver a service? And then if he isn't performing, number 2 gets the opportunity, number 3 gets the opportunity. My thing on that would be, instead of having 3 or 4 contractors on a framework, have 7.
Yeah, so and you're right. So for us, the answer is to have an annual review and of those contracts.
Yeah. Or again, every 2 years you have a clause that if contractor 3, 4, and 5 haven't engaged with us when we've asked them, they get struck off, and an opportunity for.
But also you've got to adjust for price, because you can't set a framework price as for 7 years, because you can't.
No, you can't. But then you can have inflationary meetings, can't you? I mean, in 4-year contracts that I've had in the past, normally year 2, you can request a percentage uplift. Like I said, from my experience, it just gives us that stability to be able to grow a business and put the correct processes in place. You're a little bit all over the place if you don't have a framework.
Thanks, Andrew. That's really, really valuable. There's some remarks in the chat. There's something about the cost of the applicant to employ a site manager or architect. Now, we would argue at Foundations that eligible fees can be defrayed to the grant itself, but that assumes that the contractor has already won the contract, of course. Here's one for you, Andrew. Sue in Northumberland says that there is a bathroom framework with 6 contractors on a rotational process in Northumberland. Works very well, she says. So keep an eye on that one for when it next comes up. Not a million miles from where you are. Simon, and I don't know where he is actually, but they use a schedule of rates with a closed list of contractors that are used in rotation. As I said, I think there has to be some sort of break clause in that before it becomes a cozy club. But yeah, thank you for your time, Andrew.
No problem.
Go on. Is there any questions out there? Stick them in the chat. Otherwise, it's back to Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Andrew. That was really good to get a contractor's perspective on these kind of issues. So thank you for joining us today.